The Baltic skies were never truly quiet. Below, cargo ships crept through waters claimed by many, but owned by none. Above, military radar spun endlessly, waiting, watching. On this morning, the silence broke. Screens inside Sweden's Air Defense Command lit with alarms. Red contacts, fast and high. Su-35s, Russia's pride. Heavy fighters prowling just inside international airspace, close enough to send a message. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. But today, their formation was different. Tighter, aggressive. 4 of them, an operator muttered. They're running a pattern. They're testing us. At a nearby air base, the alert siren wailed. Inside a hardened shelter, a Saab S-39 Gripen sat ready. It wasn't built to dazzle with sheer size or noise. It was built for survival, to launch from frozen highways, to fight outnumbered, to think smarter than its opponent. In the age of giants, it was David's sling. The pilot climbed the ladder with calm precision. No scrambling chaos. Sweden had trained for this moment for decades. Engines roared, sharp, controlled, efficient. The Gripen rolled from its shelter, taxiing with purpose. Its double delta wings caught the morning light, compact yet lethal. Gripen 1, you are clear to intercept. An officer's voice crackled. Monitor, shadow, deter. Do not fire unless fired upon. Gripen 1 copies. The jet surged forward, lifting clean into the sky. From below, it looked impossibly small compared to the Russians hunting overhead. But to those who knew its design, it was exactly where it belonged. Alone, outnumbered, ready to prove itself. The climb was swift. Radar swept, painting the intruders. For contacts spreading wide. Su-35s, each larger than the Gripen. Each boasting more thrust, more weapons, more fuel. On paper, the mismatch was absurd. At 30,000 feet, the Baltic stretched endlessly below. Ahead, contrails carved by Russian engines gleamed like scars. The Su-35 shifted formation, one climbing higher, another drifting left. Their pilots knew someone was coming. They wanted it. Contact visual, the Gripen pilot said quietly. His HUD framed the first Russian silhouette. A twin-tailed beast, engines blazing. Behind it, 3 more spread wide, like wolves encircling prey. From Moscow's perspective, this was power. From Sweden's, it was intimidation. But intimidation cut both ways. The Gripen leveled, holding steady. Alone, the Russian leader's voice crackled across the open frequency, mocking in accented English. Little Swedish bird, you are out of place. Turn back before you are broken. Laughter followed on their net. 4 against 1. To them, this was a game. The Gripen pilot didn't answer. He simply adjusted his throttle, climbing another 1,000 feet, slotting himself directly across from them. Radar lock chirped his ears, Russian sensors probing him. Warnings blinked red, but he stayed calm. On the ground, Swedish commanders leaned over consoles, knuckles white. One officer muttered, "He can't take them all." Another replied quietly, "That's why we built Gripen, because sometimes he'll have to." The Russians tightened their circle. One dove low, engines howling, trying to force the Gripen downward. Another climbed high, circling like a hawk. The other 2 split wide, squeezing the Swede into a box. Radar warnings shrieked in his headset, lock tones rising and falling. The Gripen pilot adjusted calmly, rolling inverted, slicing across the sky in a move so clean it looked like instinct. The low Su-35 tried to follow, but its heavy frame lagged. For a heartbeat, the tables flipped, the prey sliding past its predator. The Gripen steadied, its nose tracing the Russian's tail. It was only a second, but it was enough to remind them this prey had teeth. Fox 1, a Russian called over his internal net, a simulated missile launch. The warning screamed. The Gripen pilot flared, diving sharply, pulling 7G as the horizon spun. His hand slammed the countermeasure switch. Electronic noise lit the ether. Flares tumbled. The simulated missile lost lock. Missile defeated. The pilot said flatly, "Not bravado. Just fact. In the Russian cockpits, frustration simmered. "Lock him again," their leader snapped. Another Su-35 painted him with radar. The Gripen jinked left, then right, the delta wing biting air with savage precision. He was smaller, lighter, and harder to pin. Every time they thought they had him, he slipped free. "He's still alive," a NATO observer murmured in a distant bunker. "Not alive," another corrected. "He's controlling the fight." The Russians pressed harder. Two Su-35s bracketed him head-on, their massive frames casting shadows across his canopy. The leader's voice cut in again. "You cannot escape. Even your little jet knows it." The Gripen pilot finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost cold. "We were never built to escape." With that, he rolled into the vertical, afterburner blazing, pulling into a climb so sharp it tore him free from their trap. The Su-35s lunged after him, engines screaming, but their heavy frames fought the air. The smaller Swede darted between them, contrails exploding into spirals. For the first time, the Russians weren't chasing prey. They were chasing a ghost. The Gripen leveled at 40,000 feet. The pilot flicked a switch. The jet's electronic warfare suite came alive. Invisible ripples of noise filled the ether, jamming radars, confusing seekers. To the Russians, the green dot on their screens flickered, jumped, then vanished. "He's gone. My radar lost him," one swore. For a moment, the Gripen was a ghost. The pilot rolled inverted, dove sharply, then leveled beneath their formation. The Su-35 scrambled above, chasing phantoms. "Where is he?" the Russian leader demanded. Then a new warning shrieked in his wingman's headset. "Missile lock!" from behind. The Gripen had reappeared on his tail. "Fox 2, kill!" The Swedish pilot's voice was clinical. On the exercise board, a red icon blinked out. One Su-35 down. In the command bunker, jaws dropped. 1 against 4, and he just killed one. The Russian formation shattered. They were no longer hunters moving in harmony. They were rattled men. One Su-35 dropped into the weeds, skimming the Baltic waves, trying to bait the Swede into a chase. The Gripen followed carefully, using terrain masking. The Russian thought he had shaken him until another lock warning blared. Fox 1, kill! Another Su-35 gone. 2 against 1. The odds were still brutal, but the Russians no longer felt like giants. They felt hunted. "Enough! Break him!" the leader screamed. The remaining 2 Su-35s dove in from opposite angles, cannons armed. The Gripen rolled hard, flares bursting. For seconds, it looked impossible. The little jet caught in a storm. But the Gripen wasn't just built to fight. It was built to slip free. The pilot pulled vertical, then flipped inverted and dove through the narrowest seam between them. The Su-35s nearly collided, alarms blaring. The Gripen emerged clean. The Russian leader cursed, pulling hard, his wingmen trailing desperately. They weren't coordinated anymore. They were desperate men chasing a shadow. The Gripen slipped behind the wingmen. Fox 2, kill! Another red icon blinked off. Only one remained. The Russian leader was alone against the very jet he had mocked. Rage clouded his judgment. He pushed his throttles to the stops, afterburners spitting fire. "Come to me, little bird. Let's finish this." The merge came fast. 2 silhouettes closed. The Su-35 pulled into a climbing turn, brute force carrying it upward. The Gripen snapped into a barrel roll, twisting out of the giant's cone, then darting back across its tail. The Russian threw his jet into a high-alpha maneuver, a cobra, nose pitching violently skyward to force an overshoot. It was a move designed to shock. For a moment, the Gripen flashed ahead. The Russian squeezed the trigger. "Guns, kill!" he shouted. But nothing registered. His rounds traced empty sky. The Gripen had already slipped sideways, canards biting air, rolling inverted in a move so precise it seemed impossible. The hunter had missed. In the Swedish bunker, officers pounded the table. He'd dodge him. He's behind him. The Su-35 wallowed, bleeding energy. The Gripen slid in behind like a ghost. The locked tone shrieked in the Russian's ears. Fox 1, Kill. Silence reigned in the command bunker. The last red icon blinked out. Only the single green that remained. Steady. Alone. Victorious. The Russian pilot slumped in his cockpit. Impossible, he whispered. The Gripen pilot said nothing. He leveled his jet and turned calmly back towards Swedish airspace. The battle was over. On the ground, soldiers erupted into cheers. But in the command tent, the mood was grave. They came to intimidate, a minister whispered. Now they have been humiliated. Moscow will not forget. Nor forgive, the commander replied. But sometimes the price of survival is to remind giants that we exist. Across the Baltic, the Russians spun their story, a routine exercise, no results measured. But inside their debriefing rooms, the tone was dark. Four of their finest humiliated by a single underdog. The message was clear. The small could still bite. For the Gripen pilot, there were no parades. His name was classified. He wasn't a hero in need of a spotlight. He was a craftsman who had done his job. But among NATO pilots, the story became legend. In smoky squadron bars, pilots who had once joked about Sweden's cheap fighter now spoke its name with respect. On the tarmac, under floodlights, the Gripen sat quiet, steam rising from its fuselage. To the untrained eye, it still looked too small. But every rivet told a different truth. It had faced four giants and returned without a scratch. In the fragile silence of the Baltic night, one truth echoed across the skies. Respect was not demanded by size. It was earned by survival. This is Hidden Valor. Subscribe for more stories where underdogs defy the odds and the skies reveal truths no one wanted to admit.